Alright, we're going to start on the second video for graphing equations, linear equations, and more. And on this one, we are going to find X and Y intercepts and use those for graphing. So this is kind of a preview of X and Y intercepts, and we will have more in this chapter about that later. So to find the X intercept, because all of the ordered pairs on the x-axis are a number, comma, 0, then I'm going to put 0 in for y, okay? So I'm going to say 4 times x minus 0 equals 7, and then I divide both sides by 4, and I get that x equals 7/4. So my ordered pair is 7/4, 0. Let me write that out. I'm going to leave myself some space here. 7/4, 0. And then I find my y-intercept. Every ordered pair on the y-axis is 0, comma, some number, right? So I'm going to put a 0 in for x and then solve for y. And I can do this by dividing by -1. So my y-intercept will be at 0, -7. And then it's always a good idea to just find a third ordered pair as a checkpoint, right? Something that's going to make this easy to work with. And so if I put in, let's say for x, I put in a 2, right? Now I know this is going to work out because all I have to do is divide by -1 on the y, right? So I have 4 times 2 minus y equals 7. And this is an 8, so I will subtract 8 on both sides. -1y equals -1. And so y is a positive 1. So I have an ordered pair at 2, 1. Okay, so let's put this on the graph. Now, if one of these is off, that means we messed up, right? We messed up a sign or something. And by doing that extra point, that third point, we can check ourselves. We wouldn't really know it because any 2 points make a line. I don't know if you remember that from geometry. But we have 1 3/4, 0. We have 0, -7. And 2, 1. And then this is a fairly steep line. You know, we have to kind of guess on that part where we're graphing that fraction a little bit. That turned out pretty good. I think I'll just leave it there, okay? And so that's it there. So when equations are written in the form ax plus by equals c, we know that's linear, right? That's a linear equation. On this next one, notice it says graph nonlinear equations. So if it is a y equals the absolute value of x, then this makes a v. This is going to be a v when we graph it. If only I could write. Let me draw some straight lines here. All right, it's going to look like this on the graph. And you have to be careful with that because you're taking the absolute value of the number when you substitute it in. So notice we're going to substitute -2 for x, so the absolute value of -2 is 2, so 2 plus 2 is 4. The absolute value of -1 is 1, so 1 plus 2 is 3. The absolute value of 0 is 0. 0 plus 2 is 2. Now, if you don't do the absolute value, you'll end up with a line, and this is definitely not a line, right? Because it's not linear. It's non-linear. It's an absolute value equation. The absolute value of 1 is 1. So notice we have a 3 again. This is where we end up making our v. And then the absolute value of 2 is 2. 2 plus 2 is 4. You should end up with some y coordinates that are the same. That's how you get a v. So let's graph these ordered pairs. So we have -2, 4. -1, 3, 0, 2. At 1, we're at 3 on the y, and 2, 4. And then we will have a v. I'm very thankful for my line making tool here. I'm off a little bit on that one. Let's try that again. I'm coming at it at a weird angle here when I'm looking at it. Oops, I stopped too soon. Oh gosh. And this is how it goes. I'm leaving this one. Yes, there we go. I do the same thing when I'm teaching this in class because I'm always trying to hit my points there. Okay, so this is a x cubed, so it's a cubic equation, and cubic equations are going to usually they're going to have some squiggle to them, okay? And it can go in different directions depending on signs, but in this case, this one will look somewhat similar to what I drew up there. So basically, we just substitute in and cube that. So -2 to the third power is -8, and so this is going to be a -10, sorry. And then -1 to the third is -1, and then subtract 2, so -1 minus 2 is -3. 0 to any power is still 0, so that's a -2. 1 cubed is 1 cubed, not squared, is 1, and 1 minus 2 is -1. 2 to the third power is 8. 8 minus 2 is 6. Now, on this, if you don't do enough points, you may end up thinking it looks one way when it didn't really look that way, so you want to be careful on that depending on the equation. And I'm going to graph these. So -2 all the way down to -10, -1, -3, 0, -2, 1, -1. Notice just those 3 points look like they're in a line, but that's where it makes the curve, right? And then goes up in fairly steeply to 6, right? So we start down here, and then we curve, and we miss that point. I think I'm just going to go from here to here. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. And then I'll kind of pick it back up here. I'm not being a, yeah, well, it's a little rickety, but I'm going to leave it that way, right? So it starts pretty steeply and curves at the place where we had those 3 points that could look like a line. That's why I'm saying if that's the only points you found, you could be confused on this graph. All right, next. So this one is a quadratic equation. It's to the second power, and that means that it makes a parabola. Right? So every time it's quadratic, it makes a parabola, and these are things that would be good to know, right? We're just going to find 3 points this time. So we take 2 times -1 squared. -1 squared is 1, right? And 2 times 1 is 2. Oops. 2 times 0 squared is still going to be 0. 2 times 1 squared will be 2 because we still get a 1 when we square that. And then graph these points. So we definitely need a vertex, right? That's where we are at 0, 0. That's called a vertex. And then we're at -1, 2, and +1, 2. And this is a fairly narrow parabola because we multiplied it by 2, right? What we squared, we multiplied by 2. Yeah, coming at it from either direction doesn't really work for me. I just get all squiggly. Here, I'm going to turn this sideways. I missed. Okay, so that is a little bit steeper than the standard equation, which would be just y equals x squared. And because of multiplying by 2, that's what happens. Let's look at this last one. Okay, so this one is still quadratic, which means it makes a parabola. But because it has the 1/3, this one is going to be a wider parabola. We're multiplying everything times 1/3. So we're going to take 1/3 times -3 squared. Notice I picked numbers that would be divisible by 3 after I square them. Or before I square them, you know, it's the same difference. And so this would be 9. 1/3 of 9 is 3. When we square 0, we still get 0. So 1/3 times 0 is 0. This will be a positive 9, just like -3 squared was. So that's our point at 3, 3. Okay, so we graph each one. -3, 3, 0, 0 is our vertex. 1, 2, 3. There's our other point. And then draw the parabola. Okay, so that is an introduction to graphing some linear and some nonlinear equations. And that's the end of this video.